Hello geographers, welcome to a series of lessons which have been recorded for you to help you complete your exam. These lessons run alongside a series of workbooklets, and these will help you prepare for the questions that we might get. Some of the notes have been completed for you and diagrams included to help with your exam preparation. Where you're expected to make notes or complete a task, the area will be boxed off, and this will help you to know where you need to write. The headings in the booklets match the PowerPoint, so it's easy for you to know which pages match up, but I'll do my best to tell you what pages we're using anyway. The BBC Bitesize website is really useful. Remember, we're studying OCRB and also the CGP OCR revision guide. I should state that I don't own the rights to any of the images or any of the diagrams I've used in these presentations or in your workbooklet. I've used QR codes throughout the presentations, which will take you to videos on YouTube. I've also tried to include the links as well. Welcome back geographers, we're now on part B, so we're going to use booklet B for the next few lessons. How is the UK's population changing? In this lesson we're going to look at an overview of population trends in the UK since 2001, and we're going to be linking that to housing shortages. So in today's lesson, we're going to be investigating how the UK population has changed over time. The aim of the lesson is to help us to understand the effects of population change in creating housing shortages, and you're going to be able to summarise the link between population change and housing shortages by the end of the lesson. Turn to page 2 of your workbook, please. The title of this graph is How the UK's Population Has Grown Over 2 Decades. Remember, a decade is 10 years, so this covers 20 years. You'll notice that the data is slightly out of date, and this will be because it was based on population data from the last census. You can see along the x-axis we've got years, and along the y-axis we've got our population, so our number of people. If we had an exam question based on this graph, it would probably ask us something about how the UK's population has changed. Remember, the best answers will always include data. So that means that we have to include information from the y-axis as well as information from the x-axis. An answer worth about 3 marks would probably look something like this. In 1992, the UK's population was 57.5 million. It rose steadily until 2012, when it was 63.7 million. In the 20 years shown on the graph, about 6.2 million people were added to the UK's population. Pause the presentation for a few minutes and copy down those 3 sentences to show how to analyse a graph like this. Turn to page 3 of your workbook, please. This graph shows annual population change. We can see along the x-axis we've got the years 1992 to 2014. Along the y-axis we've got minus 50,000 up to 600,000. This graph shows overall change in the UK's population, which is shown by a red line. Underneath the red line you can see that there are dark blue bars which show something called natural increase. That is births minus deaths, so how the UK's population is increasing naturally. So when there are more births than deaths, the population goes up. The light blue bars show migration. So what this graph shows is that the population of the UK has increased over time due to a combination of natural increase and migration. The graph shows that until the 1990s, most of the population growth was due to natural increase. That meant that there was more births than deaths. After 1990s, most of the increase in population was due to migration. That meant that more people were migrating to the UK than were leaving. So if you combine the natural increase with international migration, the population of the UK goes up. That's what that graph shows if we break it down. You've got 2 questions on the right hand side. So number 1, define natural population increase. So you can use the paragraph which is on the board and at the top of your workbook page to answer that question. And number 2, describe the contribution of net migration and natural increase to the overall population change in the UK. Pause the presentation for a few minutes whilst you have a go at answering those 2 questions. Use the graph, remember, and use the paragraph at the top to help you. So check your answer against what I've written and improve your answer if needed. So natural population increase is the positive difference between births and deaths, which increases the population. So when births are higher than deaths, the population naturally increases. Number 2, describe the contribution of net migration and natural increase to overall population change in the UK. Between 1992 and 2014, there have been more births than deaths each year, over 200,000 in 2014. And also, since 1994, there have been more migrants entering the UK, e.g., over 300,000 in 2005. This means that the population has risen. To get that answer, I used the graph. Let's quickly recap population density. So remember, this is a choropleth map. So on our exam, the key is really important. This key shows number of people per square kilometre. Highest population densities are in the south and southeast. This is shown by the darkest colours, which are typically 500 people or more per square kilometre. Lowest population densities are in Wales and Scotland, which can also be linked to the terrain. Let's recap land use. Remember that word land use means how the land is used. So we said in the UK, 12% of the land is used for towns and cities, so 12% is urban. We said that 20% of the land use is arable, which means it's used for growing crops. We said that 44% of the land use was for grazing, so grazing cows and sheep. These are often found in our upland areas. We said 13% of the UK is woodland, 7% is mountainous moorland areas, and 1% is our lakes and rivers. So the UK is facing a housing shortage. As the population increases and the life expectancy rises, more and more people are seeking affordable housing. It has been estimated that over 250,000 new homes need to be built each year to keep up with demand. Currently, around 110,000 are being constructed annually. The problem is worse in places such as London, where it is estimated that 160 new homes will need to be added over the next 5 years. High-density flats, such as those built in cities such as Birmingham, are one solution, as this allows a large number of people to live in a small area. Lots of new developments are being built on the outskirts of towns in the countryside. These developments can threaten green belts, which are areas with strict planning controls. Turn to page 4 of your workbook, please. Titles Housing Shortages in the UK. As we have a natural increase in population alongside greater immigration, we are putting pressure on the housing stock, which is the amount of houses available to live in. This is creating housing shortages in parts of the UK. So there is space for you to make notes from the YouTube clip. I've provided the QR code, which you can scan in using your phone or your iPad. You can use the YouTube link. If neither of those are accessible to you, then the clip title is Why is the UK Suffering a Housing Crisis? There are 4 questions I want you to focus on. These are also in your workbook. What are the housing issues? What does the clip say is to blame for the housing crisis? What do we mean by generation rent? And what impact is generation rent having? So scanning your QR code, go to the video clip, make notes from the video, and do all of this in your workbook, please. Well done for completing this lesson, geographers. So we've just analysed the UK population trends since 2001, and we've linked that to housing shortages.